Welcome to this deep dive. Today we're going to be talking all about the book How to Talk to Anyone. And this deep dive is for all of you out there who want to become more intelligent, insightful, and likable through the art of conversation. And I'm super excited to jump into this. I thought we could start by discussing the importance of first impressions and how the book really dives into those crucial first few seconds. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's so interesting how much those first few seconds really do color our perception of someone. We're kind of making these snap judgments about, their trustworthiness, their competence, their likability. And a lot of it's happening without us even realizing it. And the book does a great job of tapping into that psychology and giving us some really interesting techniques to make those impressions count.
Absolutely. And one that stood out to me, I know we were talking about this one earlier, was the flooding smile.
Right.
It's not just about like putting on that fake smile. It's really about creating that genuine connection.
Yeah, it's about delaying that smile just a fraction of a second. Taking a moment to truly see the person that you're meeting and then letting a warm and authentic smile spread across your face. And, they've done studies on this and they found that this delayed smile, it actually signals sincerity and it makes the other person feel like that smile is just for them.
Like you're saying, I see you and I'm genuinely happy to meet you, which kind of leads us into the eye contact section. And I was really intrigued by the ideas behind sticky eyes and epoxy eyes. Could you kind of break those down for me?
Yeah, absolutely. So sticky eyes is all about maintaining eye contact just a little bit longer than you normally would, to really convey that attentiveness and make the other person feel like they have your undivided attention. Think about when you're talking to someone and their eyes are darting all over the room. It makes you feel really unimportant.
Yeah, absolutely not. Like you're the focus of their attention.
Exactly. And sticky eyes combats that. Now epoxy eyes takes it to another level.
That's the more intense one, right?
Yes, epoxy eyes is like laser focus,
Yeah. Yeah.
It's that unwavering gaze that you might see from like CEOs or investigators.
Yeah.
People who really need to command attention and convey authority.
Yeah.
It can be incredibly powerful, but it's one of those things that you want to use very judiciously and ethically. If you imagine someone.
I love it. Okay, so let's dive into the world of body language. The book shares this captivating story about Hans the horse to kind of illustrate the power of those nonverbal cues. I thought it was fascinating.
Oh, yeah, Hans the horse. So, Hans was this horse back in the early 20th century who was believed to be a mathematical genius because he could seemingly answer these complex questions just by tapping his hoof.
Really?
But a group of scientists, they were really intrigued by this, and so they started investigating, and they discovered that Hans wasn't actually solving equations. He was reading the subtle, unconscious cues of the audience. He would keep tapping until he sensed, maybe a shift in their posture or their facial expressions that indicated he was getting close to the right answer.
So he was more of an expert in observation.
Exactly. He was a master of observation. And his story is a really potent reminder that, as humans, we're constantly communicating through our bodies, whether we realize it or not. Our facial expressions, our posture, even the way we breathe can reveal our thoughts and emotions.
So even when we think we're keeping our thoughts to ourselves, our bodies are kind of telling a different story.
Exactly. It's like the secret language that we're all speaking.
And speaking of communication techniques, the book introduces this move called the big baby pivot, which sounds a little strange, but is actually quite ingenious when you think about it.
It does sound a little odd, but it's really about tapping into that primal instinct for connection. So, think about the way a young child greets a loved one. Their arms are open wide, their face lights up with joy, their eyes are sparkling with excitement. And the book suggests that by mimicking this open and welcoming body language, we can actually trigger that same instinct in others to respond with warmth and affection.
So it's like channeling our inner child to connect with others.
Exactly, disarming people with enthusiasm.
I love it. Now let's tackle a topic that I think a lot of people maybe kind of shudder at the thought of, and that is small talk.
Aye, small talk.
It can feel a little bit awkward, sometimes a little bit forced. What are your thoughts on small talk?
Yeah, it can feel a little like you're navigating a social minefield sometimes, but the book does a really good job of reframing small talk as that bridge to more meaningful connection.
I like that.
It's like dipping your toes into the conversational waters before you dive into the deep end.
Yeah, instead of looking at it as this hurdle that you have to get through, you can look at it as an opportunity to find some common ground and kind of test the waters a little bit.
Exactly. And the book actually shares this funny anecdote about an elevator ride with a group of mensons that really illustrates this point.
Oh, yeah, the Mensa elevator.
Right, so the author is feeling kind of tired, just wants a quiet elevator ride, and they find themselves in this elevator with all of these mensons who are just buzzing with excitement about analyzing why the elevator is so slow.
Sounds like my nightmare.
Right, it's this total clash of energy
So
levels.
how do we avoid those energy clashes and actually make small talk more engaging?
Well, the book offers this great technique called prosaic with passion. And it's really the art of making even the most mundane topics sound interesting by infusing them with genuine enthusiasm.
Right. It's like I'd rather listen to someone passionately talk about their stamp collection than someone drone on about, a topic they clearly don't care about.
Exactly, passion is contagious.
Yeah, it's not always about what you say, it's how you say it. I love that. Okay, so we've mastered the art of small talk. How do we actually steer those conversations towards something more memorable and engaging?
Well, the book gives us this clever little technique called Never the Naked City, and it's all about adding context and detail to your answers instead of just stating bare facts, you know? So,
Okay.
for example, instead of just saying, I'm from Chicago, you could say, I'm from Chicago, a city that's bursting with architectural marvels and hidden culinary gems. Have you ever tried deep dish pizza?
Okay, so you're giving them something to latch onto.
Exactly. You're painting a picture. You're not just giving them a naked fact.
I love it. All right, so kind of on the topic of, everyone having a story, the book talks about paying attention to those little slips of the tongue.
Oh, yes, those seemingly insignificant verbal hiccups.
What do we do with those?
Well, they can actually be gold mines for uncovering hidden passions and sparking deeper conversations.
How so?
So the book gives an example of this woman who's in a conversation about something else entirely, and she just randomly mentions, my orchids are thriving.
Yeah.
And instead of just glossing over it, the author seizes this opportunity and they discover that this woman is an avid orchid enthusiast. And they end up having this fascinating conversation about her collection.
It's like a little window into her soul, that little slip.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it just goes to show that active listening is about more than just hearing the words. It's about picking up on those subtle cues and using them as springboards for deeper connection.
I love that. Now, another technique that really caught my eye was encore. And it just sounds like a way to make people feel valued and appreciated.
It's all about encouraging someone to share a story they've told you before, especially in a group setting.
Yeah.
You know, it's a way of saying, I found your story so engaging and memorable that I want to hear it again, and I think everyone else will too.
You're putting the spotlight back on them,
Exactly.
giving them a chance to shine.
Okay, so let's shift gears a little bit and talk about the power of praise. And the book introduces this thing called the tombstone game, which sounds a little morbid at first glance.
I know the name is a little unsettling,
Yeah.
but it's actually a really brilliant exercise in understanding what people value most and then using that knowledge to give more meaningful compliments.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
So it involves asking someone, what one quality would you want to be remembered for on your tombstone?
Oh, deep.
Right? And their answer, it reveals their core values and aspirations.
So then you can actually tailor your praise to what matters to them.
Exactly. It's about recognizing and appreciating those unique strengths and qualities.
So it's not just a generic compliment.
No, it becomes a powerful affirmation. I like that. Okay. And then there was also the more subtle technique, accidental adulation. Can you explain that one a little bit?
Yes, accidental adulation is all about implying compliments rather than stating them directly.
Hmm.
So, for instance, you might say, you're so good at remembering birthdays I'm terrible at that I wish I had your organizational skills.
Like a backhanded compliment, but in a good way.
Right. You're acknowledging their strength while also revealing a little bit about yourself.
Okay, I like that. Now let's move into the realm of phone finesse, because the book really emphasizes the importance of using the person's name frequently during phone conversations.
Right. It's so easy to forget that when you're not face to face.
Yeah,
But it makes a huge difference in terms of creating that personal connection.
absolutely. Makes them feel like you're actually present in the conversation.
Yeah.
Okay, then we have this sneaky little tactic that the book reveals for bypassing gatekeepers called the sneaky screen. I love these little sneaky tactics.
Right. So it's all about sounding like you're already familiar with the person that you're trying to reach. So instead of saying, can I please speak to Mr. Smith, you would simply say, is he in?
You're in the know.
Right.
Like, you're an insider.
I love it. Okay, so let's talk about navigating those sometimes tricky social and professional settings. I feel like I'm already armed with so many great tools, but I'm always curious to hear more about how to handle those situations where maybe the stakes are a little higher.
Right, so social and professional settings, they often come with these unspoken rules and expectations,
Hmm.
and the book introduces this concept of safe havens, which are essentially places where it's probably best to avoid bringing up sensitive or controversial topics.
Okay.
So parties and dinners are great
You
examples.
stick to the lighter topics.
Exactly. There's a time and a place for everything. And the book shares this really cringeworthy anecdote about a Christmas party where someone decides to confront a client about a business deal gone wrong.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it creates this incredibly awkward tension, and the relationship is ultimately damaged.
You got to read the room. Right.
Okay, so on that note of social graces, let's talk about active listening. I know it's so crucial, but I'll admit I sometimes struggle to stay fully engaged, especially if someone's telling maybe a really long or meandering story. Any tips on that?
Well, active listening can be a challenge, especially in our, distraction-filled world, but it's definitely a skill worth honing. And the book offers this simple but effective technique called parroting, which basically involves repeating a few key words or phrases from what the other person just said.
So instead of just nodding and saying, uh-huh,
Yeah.
you might say, wow, that sounds incredibly frustrating, or that's an amazing accomplishment.
Exactly. You're demonstrating that you're not just passively hearing words, but you're actually processing and engaging with what they're saying.
And it makes them feel heard.
Exactly. And it encourages them to elaborate and share more openly.
Yeah, it's like you're mirroring back their emotions a little bit and showing that empathy and creating that safe space for them to share.
Okay, but what about when you need to make a graceful exit? Sometimes I struggle with ending conversations smoothly without feeling like I'm being rude or abrupt.
I think that's something we all struggle with.
If you
We want to
would.
be respectful of people's time, but we also don't want to seem dismissive.
Right.
And the book offers this really helpful technique called linger longer.
Okay, tell me more.
So instead of just being like, all right, gotta run, try extending the goodbye just a little bit longer. Maybe linger for a moment with a handshake or a warm smile. You could even mention a specific detail from the conversation. Like, it was so fascinating hearing about your trip to Nepal. I'll definitely check out those hiking trails you mentioned.
So you're leaving them with that positive, lasting impression.
Exactly. You're acknowledging the value of the conversation
Right.
and expressing a genuine interest in staying connected.
It's not just a fleeting interaction.
Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive into how to talk to anyone, what would you say are some of the key takeaways for our listener?
Well, I think this book is just such a treasure trove of communication techniques, from mastering those first impressions to navigating those tricky social situations.
Right.
But I think the biggest takeaway is that it's not about memorizing a bunch of scripts or tricks. It's about really understanding the underlying principles of human connection.
Approaching every conversation with that sense of curiosity and genuine interest in the other person.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that everyone has a story to tell and
Right.
that we have the power to create these really meaningful connections through authentic and engaging communication.
So as you go out into the world armed with all of these amazing techniques, remember the spirit of connection. Be
Hmm.
present, be curious, and be genuine. And I think you'll find that those conversations become so much more than just words. They're opportunities to build bridges and really create lasting relationships.
Well said.
Happy connecting.